Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Welcome to History and Government lesson. Today we are going to study on a topic entitled Establishment of Colonial Rule in Kenya. Establishment of Colonial Rule in Kenya. That is the topic that we are continuing to study. And remember, we started by looking back and seeing how the British or the process of the partitioning of East Africa, and finally how the British started to occupy the African or the Kenyan territory. We also learned that they used company rule to establish the rule, which company was used by the British to establish the authority and control in Kenya. I hope you are able to remember. We said it is the Imperial British East African Company, and we studied how it established the control, how it started getting areas and investing in the Kenyan territory. But at some point, it was overwhelmed. The duty became too much because the land was quite big and they did not have enough resources. So the government of Britain, or the British government, decided to send in more officials to act directly on behalf of the British government. And that is how they ended up establishing and occupying the Kenyan territory. So in the last lesson, we learned how the Kenyans reacted, how the Kenyan societies reacted to the occupation of the British, the response of the Kenyan communities to British occupation. And we said the societies reacted in three ways. Can you be able to remember the three ways in which the Kenyan societies were able to react against the colonial or the British people? The three ways. We said there are three of them. Three ways. Which are they? The first one, we said it is resistance. Resistance. They resisted. They stood and fought against the British. And we mentioned several communities. We also mentioned that they reacted by collaborating, that is, cooperating with the British people. And then we said there are other communities that had mixed reactions. Mixed reactions means some were resisting while others were cooperating at the same time. And in our last lesson, we started engaging into the resistance as a response. So number one, we are studying resistance to British rule. That is the subtopic that we are having. And the community that we are studying is the resistance of the Nandi. So number one, the first community is the Nandi. We said there are other communities apart from Nandi that resisted. Are you able to remember them? The communities that resisted the British colonial rule. The first one that we are studying are the Nandi. We also mentioned there are the Bukusu. We also shall see the Agiriama, and then finally we shall look at the Somali. So, but we have started with the Nandi, and we said in our last lesson we studied the causes. What were the things that forced the Nandi to resist against the British rule? We said there are several reasons. The major one being the pride of the Nandi. They thought they are superior. They had conquered most of their neighbors, so they had a sense of pride. They were naturally people who were warlike, so they were able to defeat most of the neighbors. Also, they had a very strong leadership that galvanized the people and encouraged them to fight against the British. Then the other reason is that they did not like the color. The color of the British made them to fight against them. They were considered to be like devils. Also, Kimnyole's prophecy played another role, or was another cause of the people of the Nandi fighting against the British. He also mentioned that the land alienation, or the loss of land, was a cause for them to fight. Also, they had military. They had military training. Most of their army was military, was well trained and disciplined, which encouraged them to fight against the British, among many other causes that we mentioned. So in our today's lesson, we are going now to look further and make another step forward and ask ourselves, how did the war progress? How did they resist against the British? How did the war begin, and how were they defeated, if at all they were defeated? So we're going to look at the cause of the Nandi resistance. The cause of the Nandi resistance. The cause of the Nandi resistance. And the first thing we are supposed we learn is that it started in 1895. That is when the resistance started, and it started after certain British known as Andrew Dick attacked and killed two Nandi warriors who had strayed into his camp. This was a British trader. So in his camp, he met some two Nandi warriors who are working in his camp, and decided to kill them. So decided to kill. Actually, this is to kill. Decided to kill two Nandi warriors. So this, when he attacked and killed these warriors, this angered the whole community. The whole community now, or the other people, decided to retaliate against the British, and they in turn killed the Nandi. The Nandi killed another British trader who was known as Peter West. So immediately after Andrew Dick attacked and killed the two Nandi warriors, the community resulted or retaliated by killing another trader who was known as Peter West. So that sparked the bad blood, or sparked the killings, or the resistance of the Nandi. Immediately after that, the Nandi also continued with a series of attacks on the British traders. So there was a series of attacks. They constantly attacked the British traders who are coming from the coast as they go towards Uganda, that was engaging in the trade. So every now and then, the Nandi could stage or mount attacks against these traders, and it happened that each and every time they attacked, the British could send expeditions, that is an army or a people, to try and quench or fight against the people. So this happened by them. So the British, we are saying, decided, British sends expeditions, and these are organized armies to go and try and fight against the Nandi, who every now and then are attacking the traders on their trading activities. But something to the detriment of the British, every time they spend or they send an expedition, it was unable to conquer the Nandi, because the Nandi were well trained. Remember, I said they had a very strong army based on the initiation. Each and every time the young men were initiated, they were called into into the army, to serve into the army, and they became very disciplined. So they, every time the British was able to send an expedition after an attack, it was always defeated. So these continued that in 1897, that is 2 years later, in 1897, that is 2 years later, the Nandi made a very severe attack on the British Mail Party. British Mail Party. This was a group of traders that were going on with their trading activities, but the Nandi decided to fight, or decided to attack them, and these really angered the British. So they decided to bring a very or even more punitive expeditions to fight against the Nandi. But in the same way, the first one had started, or had been unable to be quenched. The British were defeated. Why? Because immediately the British were bringing their armies, or their soldiers, to fight against the Nandi. The Nandi could just attack them and then go and hide in the terrain, hide in the forest. And remember, this is their homeland. They understand their terrain better than the British. So they could easily attack and then go and hide against the British. So the British could not make significant impact. They could not attack or be able to defeat the Nandi warriors, and because they could easily sleep, they have just attacked them, and when they ran away, you could not know where the British could not know what had happened. This happened even continued even in 1899, when there was building. This happened. There was when the building of the railway reached the Nandi territory. The attacks by the Nandi intensified at this period. Remember, in the Kimyole's prophecy, as I had mentioned earlier, he had seen the prophet had seen an iron snake. He had seen a very big snake coming into the land of the Nandi. So when the Nandi saw the railway entering their territory, they saw what had been prophesied earlier by Kimnyole, and these made them even more furious, because they had discredited Kimnyole as being a witch, or being his prophecy not being true. But now they saw it coming. They saw the rail entering their land. So they intensified their fight. They now could fight even more, because they did not want that rail to pass through their territory. Remember, we said the Nandi they were very proud. They had prestige. They believed they are the best, and they had the right to own that land, and nobody else could be able to do anything on that land without their consent. So they intensified their fights during this year. And so the British tried to get the Indians and the Swahilis and the Maasai, together with some of the Buganda auxiliaries. Those are people that were hired to come and fight on behalf of the British. So the British tried to organize a very large expeditions, especially during this time when they are building the railway. Remember, the railway is the center stone. It could have eased the movement of raw materials. So they really needed this railway to go to those interior parts. So they tried to bring other people, and I have mentioned they tried to bring the the Swahili soldiers, and also hired the Baganda together with the Maasai auxiliaries. These are hired hired hands to come and fight. But even so, they still were unable. They were still unable to get, or they were still unable to continue or to be able to fight effectively or stop the Nandi from attacking them. So they became frustrated. But the British government at that time sent a colonel or an army commander who is known as Colonel Menace. Colonel Me. Quite a name here. Colonel Menace Gen, right? This was a colonel that was sent, or that was leading the expeditions that was sent. Actually, this was in 1900. So when this man came, he discovered that the reason why the Nandi are fighting so furiously, and they have been, every expedition that they have tried to bring against the Nandi was being quenched or was being defeated. He discovered that the strength, or the strength of the Nandi was based on the Orkoyot, who was the religious leader, who was the overall leader of the Nandi. So he was the chief strategist of the Nandi community. He was the source of the strength of the Nandi. So when he discovered the Okoriot at that time, who was known as Koitalel Arab Samoei, right? And Arab means the son of, right? So the Orkoyot at that time, Koitalel Arab Samoei, this is an I, Samoei. So this man discovered that Koitalel Arab Samoei, who was the leader of the Nandi people at that time, was the reason why the Nandi were so united, was the reason why the Nandi could not be defeated, because he was the chief strategist. Remember, he was the religious leaders. So he made or brought all the people of the Nandi together. So what this man did, he decided to trick the Koitalel Arab Samoei with the other leaders into a meeting in the pretense of trying to discuss out or getting a way out. But what he had in intention was to execute, and actually he executed Koitalel Arab Samoei along with some other leaders. So these demoralized. It demoralized the warriors who are fighting, because now the leader, or the strength, the centerpiece, the cornerstone of their resistance has been captured and executed. And that was the strategy of this colonel. So he discovered that the community was galvanized or was united by the institution of the Okoyot, and the leader then, who was taking the Okoyot at that time, was Koitalel Arab Samoei. So he tricked him together with some leaders into a peace meeting, and then he captured Koitalel Arab Samoei and executed him. So that really demoralized the warriors. They could not now have a united attack against the British. They had now been disheartened. Their hearts were broken because their leader, the one who was leading them, the one who was giving them the courage to go and fight, had now been executed. So the British took that opportunity, and in 1905, immediately after the execution of the Koitalel Arab Samoei, the Okoyot at that time, though they continued to fight, but they did not fight with the vigor that had. So in 1905, the British sent the biggest expedition ever they had ever amassed. They were able to get 1,500. They were able to get 1,500 Indian and Swahili soldiers to come and fight against the Nandi. Also, they also included some Somali soldiers, right? And then apart from the 1,500 soldiers that were sent at that time, they also hired 1,300 auxiliaries to come and also join in the expeditions. Apart from that, they also armed. They had 900 armed porters. These were the people who were carrying the trading items from the interior into the coast, the porters. So they armed them, and also they had 10 machine guns. 10 machine guns and 2 armored trains. So this was the biggest expedition that the British had amassed against any community, because now the Nandi had become too much. So the British decided to get the largest army, the largest expedition that they could get. So you can imagine all these people are directed against one community, against the Nandi, who have been fighting for them actually for a very long time. So though the Nandi at this time, they are demoralized. Remember that they are now demoralized because their leader has been executed, and now the leaders are unable to continue. The ones who are available at that time could not effectively take the opposition of the Coyote. So the Nandi, though they tried to fight bravely, they were defeated in this year, and they were finally taken over. Their land was finally taken over by the British. So the Nandi is one community in Kenya that gave out a very long resistance. They resisted the British for quite a long time. They put up a fight that the British did not expect. It was you can see it started in 1895 and actually ended in 1905. That is 10 years of continued fighting. That was very expensive for the British, but for them, they were in their land because they had understood their land. So you ask yourself, what enabled the British or the Nandi to give such a long resistance? So reasons for the long resistance. Number one, they understood their terrain. So that is one reason why they put on a very long resistance. Reasons for long resistance. So number one, I've said the terrain worked to their advantage. The terrain. So the mountainous terrain, this is a highland, this is the Rift Valley. They have hills, they have valleys. So they understood their terrain very well, as opposed to the British, who were visitors in that area, and even the Swahili and the Swahili and the Somali and the Indians who are coming to help the British could not be able to understand that terrain. So that gave them an advantage. Another reason why they put on a long resistance was their army. They had a very large army that was provided by the age-set system. Every time they had initiation, they recruited new army members, and the army was very disciplined, just like that of the British. They were very disciplined and well trained because they took a lot of time, and also they had a constant supply of food. Constant supply of food. They had constant supply of food. They had mixed economy. They were farmers and livestock keepers. Though with the British coming to attack them, at some point they used the scorched earth policy, where they could burn down and destroy the Nandi food. They had surplus food because they were livestock keepers. So that enabled them to continue fighting. And also they had experience, they had military experience. They had military experience that enabled them to continue fighting. They had fought a lot of battles. They had subdued all their neighbors, including the Maasai that came to help the British. So they had amassed a lot of experience in their fighting. The next thing was that they had pride. They did not believe that they could be defeated, and it was their culture to continue to get wins in every battle. So they were a very proud people. They were a people who were susceptible to war. They could not accept any kind of defeat. And then the second last, they had able leadership. Able leadership. Koitalel Arap Samoei, who was the Orkoiyot at that time, provided a very solid leadership. He galvanized the whole community. The warriors, together with the communities, came together to fight against the British. And then lastly, the climate was to their advantage. The cold climate, the British could not withstand the climate in the Rift Valley. So that gave the Nandi a comparative advantage over the British. So today we have learned about the cause of the resistance of the Nandi, and how we have interrogated into details how they fought against the British and how finally they were defeated in 1905. And I've also explained the different reasons why the Nandi were able to give such a prolonged period of fighting. They fought for a very long time. So that brings us now to the end of our lesson. But before we end, allow me to give you this revision question. Allow me to give you this revision question. You just write it here. Revision question. And the question is, state and explain the reasons why the Nandi put up a prolonged resistance. State and explain the reasons why the Nandi put up a prolonged resistance. State and explain the reasons why the Nandi put up a prolonged resistance. So that is the question I want you to attempt at your free time. I encourage you not to check on what you have or on your notes that you have made. Just try and remember what we have learned. And with that, we've come to the end of our lesson today. Until the next time we shall meet, it's bye-bye.